right, so we're gonna learn a little bit about how to make foundations and footings in your Revit project. So we're gonna start a new project and make sure you choose architectural template and hit OK. We're also going to create a new type of exterior wall because when we look at our different walls in here, there's like basic wall, which is really just like solid concrete. But for exterior, a lot of these are really commercial types of exterior walls with metal studs. Metal studs aren't very common in residential homes. So we're going to change one of these to become more common to what you'd find on the outside of a house, kind of like what we did with our shed. So remember how we made our own wall for our sheds? Same thing, just another kind of practice. So we're going to do this brick on metal stud. So instead of this, we're going to edit it and duplicate it so we don't mess up this original one. And we're going to call it exterior 2x6. All right, so we have our new name here. So we're going to edit the structure to change how it's made because right now it's still really the same wall, just with a different name. So we can see in here all of these different like layers to the wall. So we have like a 3-inch brick and a 3-inch air gap, plywood sheeting, a metal stud, the gypsum wallboard, the sheetrock. And if we look at the preview, you can see here how that looks. We have the brick, air gap, the metal stud, the gypsum sheetrock. So we're going to be changing some of those things. So first thing we're going to change is this brick. So we're going to click those 3 little dots. And we're going to do a wood siding. So like we know from before, like if we go down to wood, there is no really wood siding in here. We're going to take the plywood sheathing and we're going to duplicate this selected material. So we don't want to mess up this original plywood sheeting, but we're going to use some of the stuff that's already in there to make it a little bit easier. So here's our plywood sheeting 1, the first copy. So we're going to go up to identity and we're going to change this name. So we're going to call it siding horizontal wood. Our description is just horizontal wood siding, and it's in the wood. So then in graphics, because right now it's pretty plain. When you look at your house, if you were to use this, it would just be solid white. We want to give it a pattern so that it looks kind of like wood siding. So instead of none, we're going to scroll down and grab this horizontal. And typically wood siding or siding is thicker and not the small. So we want it to kind of look realistic when you look at like your 3D view. So we're going to do horizontal and push OK. And then lastly, we're going to go to the appearance. And instead of this like light wood, we're going to do a different one. So to load in other materials and images in here, we're going to click this asset browser. And it opens up this window, this library of all kinds of different materials and things like that. So we're going to go to appearance library, go down to siding. So in here you find clapboard, white, beige, gray, siding. So if you were going to do like vinyl siding, you could do that instead for your house, or shiplap, tongue and groove, horizontal cedar. So we're going to do this right now, horizontal cedar. And if you push this little button, it replaces the current asset in the editor with this asset. So I'm just going to click that and close it. And now we can see here that it looks like wood siding, horizontal wood siding. So we're going to click apply and OK. So now we have our wood siding here instead. It would not be 3 5/8 inch thick. It's only going to be 1/2 inch thick. So we'll change that. Our thermal air layer, this air layer, we don't need. So we can click on that second layer and make it all of this black selection and do delete. This air infiltration barrier, we want to keep that. That's our house wrap. That's just something you put on houses to help with moisture and keeping the air locked in and things like that. It's 0 thickness, so we're going to keep that. our plywood sheeting, that would not typically be 3/4 of an inch thick on a residential house. It again would only be 1/2 an inch thick. All right, so now we're at our metal stud layer. So like I said before, metal studs aren't very common in residential houses. Usually it's lumber, soft lumber. So we're gonna click our three little dots and we're gonna go to our wood and just do softwood lumber. And it wouldn't be 6 inches thick. Our 2x6 would actually be 5.5 inches. So I'm actually gonna do 5.5 and it'll automatically update it to the fractions. Then we have our vapor retarder and our gypsum wallboard or our sheetrock at 1/2 inch. So that all looks good. So if we click our preview, we can see what this would look like now. Remember before it had the brick and the air gap. Now we have our siding, our plywood sheeting, our lumber, and then our gypsum board. So we're gonna hit OK. And now we have this new basic wall. So we're going to draw a house. So, or basic structure just for this practice one. It's not going to be your actual house that you'll do in a later project, just for practice for adding foundations and things like that. So I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm just going to go, let's say 36 inches-ish, sure, by 40. Maybe we'll make it a little interesting here. Draw kind of a smallish shape, not too complicated, but a general outline of a house. And it all has our basic wall exterior 2x6. So if we look at our 3D view, oh no, so you can see that my siding is on the inside of my house. That is not very helpful, is it? So to fix that, I'm going to click my little modify button. And on my walls, I'm just going to click these little arrows on all of them to get that siding on the outside. All right, let's check the 3D view again. That looks good. So you can see that horizontal line that we added, that's this look here. So it makes it look like it has siding. The sheetrock on the inside is just plain, which is how it would be. All right, so we need to add a floor to our house. I'm gonna go back to my floor plan. And I'm gonna click floor and choose all of my walls. And it's going to the outside. Okay, so instead of generic 12-inch floor, I'm going to do a wood finish. You can do wood, carpet, ceramic tile, whatever you want. It will change one setting later on if you do something different than me, but I'm going to do a wood finish. And I'm going to click my green check mark. So there is my wood floor. So we can see it in there. Perfect. So next we're going to add a foundation and footings to our house, so like how a real house and building would have. So I'm going to go to my north elevation, and I'm actually going to bring these in right now just to make things easier later on. So here is the north view of my house. So we can also see that our walls are 20 feet high, which we're going to change that. So I'm just going to click on all my walls, bring them down to 10 feet. All right, and then just to kind of help with naming practices and things like that, instead of level 1, I'm going to call this my first floor. Like what we talked about before, and I'm going to do yes, I want to change it in all the other views. Level 1 can mean different things, where like first floor or main floor or a name a little bit different than that will make it a little easier to understand what you're looking at, especially when you get more complicated pictures. So we're actually going to add 2 new levels underneath our first floor. So I'm going to go to architecture and level. And how this works is I'll just keep it lined up with my other one. So I'm going to click and click again. And now I have this level 3. So we need this to be at the very bottom of our floor. So To figure out how thick our floor is, I'm going to click on my floor and go to Edit Type. And this tells me that the thickness is 10 3/4 inches. So if you did a different type of floor, you're going to need to use that number instead of mine to make everything line up correctly. But if you did this wood finish floor, just like me, 10 3/4 inch. So on this new level that we made, I'm going to do 10 3/4 inches. But you can see it actually went above. So kind of like a coordinate system, we can make things go negative. So I'm going to make this negative 10 3/4 because like the base of our building is 0, 0. So if we want to go below it, we have to do negative. And instead of level 3, I want to call that, I need to move this. How do I get to you? Instead of level 3, I'm going to call this top of foundation. And I'm going to change the name in all of the corresponding views. So that is the very top of our foundation. This new line is going to go to that point. So we're going to add another level. So again, go to Architecture, Level, and I'm going to click and drag across. Maybe I'll go a little farther so things don't get all stuck together. So this one, we want it to be 8 feet below that top of the foundation. So if we did negative 8 feet and 10 3/4 inches, it actually went farther than that. Okay, so over here, I'm going to make this be 8 feet. There we go. Now it's 8 feet from the top of our foundation to where our footings will be, and it's 8 feet 10 3/4 inches below that. And this is going to be called top of footings. And yes. All right, so from here, now we have a layer or a level to build our foundation on. And then below that is where the footings will be. But you have to have something to put your walls on. So I'm going to go to our floor plans and go to top of footings. And when you look here, you can't see anything. We can't see where we're going to draw our foundation walls. So to change that, over in our properties here, we're going to scroll down until we get to underlay. And our base layer, we want to be the first floor. So now I can see my first floor walls on my screen. So from here, we're going to go to the walls, and we don't want to do a basic exterior wall. That's our outside. We're going to use, really you could do 8-inch, because it's just going to be solid concrete. That's probably the most common for a residential building. 12 inches possibly if it's really big. But we're going to go generic 8-inch, so an 8-inch concrete wall. The masonry one, that'd be like the concrete bricks. So I'm going to zoom in on my corners here because I want to make sure that I'm choosing my endpoints. So I don't want to be, and if you get way in here, I want to be right on the end and not like snap into something else. So like there's that other endpoint, which isn't at the very end or corner of my wall. So I want to go from there, and I can zoom out, move over, zoom in over here, get that endpoint. So this warning says highlighted walls overlap. One of them may be ignored. All right, so let's hit escape here and let's see what this means. Let's explain this a little bit. So if I go to my 3D view and I move over to see that wall that I just drew, you can see that this wall is actually going up through my first floor. So that's not good. So I'm going to undo that, or if I go to my top of my footing, delete that wall. So when I do my wall again, so basic walls are generic 8 inches. I want, let's see here. There we go. So the base constraint, so what it's being built on, is that top of footings level. In the top constraint, I want that to be my top of foundation. So it is, if I look at my elevation, it's getting the base of it, it'll be on the top of the footings, and the top of it is going to go to the top of foundation level. So it's going to be built between these two levels. So now I can try that again. So let's go wall, up to level, top of foundation. Okay. So I'm just going to work my way around my building here, making sure I am on that end point of all of my walls on the outside. All right, so now I have my foundation wall drawn all around my house. So if I go look at my 3D view, I can see that foundation wall. So I'm going to rotate around, hold the shift key and rotate my mouse so I can see the bottom of my building here. And we're going to add our footings. So we're actually going to go to structure and we're going to use this wall foundation. And we're just going to keep it at 36 by 12 inches for this. And I'm just going to click the bottom of all of these walls and it will add my foundation in, or my footing in. So now I have a footing, my foundation, and my first floor. And that's how you do that.